Martin Chen's story actually began 3 months before the incident at the mall. He sat in his corner office overlooking the city skyline, surrounded by awards and certificates that decorated his walls. The real estate company he worked for had just promoted him to senior sales manager after he closed several multi-million-dollar deals. His phone buzzed constantly with congratulations from colleagues and friends. Life seemed perfect for the ambitious young businessman. Growing up, Martin had always been competitive. His parents pushed him to excel in everything, from academics to sports. They taught him that winning was everything and showing weakness meant failure. When other kids played with pets or showed affection to animals, Martin's father would scoff. "Animals are beneath us," he would tell his son. "Focus on what matters, success and power." These lessons shaped Martin's worldview, creating a man who valued material success over compassion. His apartment reflected his priorities perfectly. The penthouse suite featured Italian leather furniture, abstract art pieces, and the latest technology. Yet it felt cold and empty. No plants brought life to the space. No photos of loved ones adorned the walls. And certainly no pets. Martin dated occasionally, but relationships never lasted long. Women found him charming at first, attracted to his confidence and success. But they soon discovered his inability to show genuine emotion or empathy. He treated people like business transactions, calculating what he could gain from each interaction. At work, Martin commanded respect through fear rather than admiration. Junior employees scattered when he entered the office, knowing his reputation for harsh criticism and zero tolerance for mistakes. He once fired an intern for spilling coffee on some paperwork, showing no concern when the young man broke down in tears. "Business isn't for the weak," Martin told his assistant that day. His colleagues tolerated him because he brought in profits, but none considered him a friend. During office parties, he stood alone, checking his phone while others laughed and bonded. The morning of the mall incident started like any other for Martin. He woke up at 5:30 sharp, went through his rigid exercise routine, and dressed in his most expensive suit. The mirror reflected someone he thought looked successful and powerful. Over breakfast, he reviewed his schedule, noting the important client meeting that afternoon. He had just secured another major property deal, adding another achievement to his growing list. The commission alone would pay for the sports car he had been eyeing. But beneath his polished exterior, Martin carried deep insecurities. He constantly compared himself to others, measuring his worth by his bank account and possessions. Social media consumed hours of his day as he posted about his achievements, desperately seeking validation through likes and comments. He couldn't pass a mirror without checking his appearance, adjusting his tie or smoothing his hair. The fear of appearing weak or unsuccessful drove every decision he made. This fear made him cruel to those he perceived as beneath him, including innocent animals. Martin's relationship with his parents remained complicated. His mother tried reaching out occasionally, suggesting he visit more often or maybe consider settling down. But Martin always had excuses: work meetings, business trips, important deals to close. His father, now retired, still called to check on his son's career progress. Their conversations never touched on personal happiness or emotional well-being, only professional achievements and financial gains. Martin told himself this was normal, that emotional connections were for people who couldn't succeed in business. That fateful day at the mall, Martin felt invincible. The successful deal had inflated his ego even more than usual. He walked with extra swagger, imagining how jealous his competitors would be when news of his latest acquisition spread. The designer watch on his wrist cost more than most people's cars, and he made sure everyone noticed it. When the small golden retriever appeared in his path, it represented everything Martin despised: vulnerability, dependency, and the need for affection. His reaction came from years of suppressed emotions and misguided values. The kick wasn't just about a momentary annoyance. It was the culmination of a lifetime spent building walls around his heart, choosing material success over human decency. Little did he know that this moment would become the turning point in his carefully constructed life. The mall erupted into chaos the moment Martin's foot connected with the small dog. Shoppers froze in disbelief, their afternoon plans forgotten as they witnessed this shocking act of cruelty. A young mother quickly covered her daughter's eyes, while an elderly man shook his head in disgust. The golden retriever's painful cry echoed through the open space, drawing even more attention to the scene. Several teenagers immediately pulled out their phones, recording everything that unfolded. Sarah Mitchell, a veterinary student working part-time at the mall's pet store, happened to be on her lunch break when she heard the commotion. She dropped her sandwich and ran toward the sound, her medical training kicking in automatically. When she saw the dog struggling to stand, she felt her heart break. Sarah had dedicated her life to helping animals, and seeing such deliberate cruelty made her stomach turn. She pushed through the growing crowd, determined to help the injured animal. A security camera mounted above the fountain captured everything in crystal clear detail. The footage showed Martin's deliberate wind-up before the kick, his laughing reaction afterward, and the dog's painful tumble across the concrete. This video would later become crucial evidence, spreading across social media within hours. The mall's security office received multiple alerts as shoppers reported the incident, each adding their own witness details to the growing complaint file. The dog's owner, Margaret Wilson, had been inside a nearby bookstore when her beloved Buster slipped his collar and wandered off. The 72-year-old woman suffered from arthritis and couldn't chase after him quickly. She emerged from the store just in time to see a crowd gathering and heard someone mention an injured dog. Her heart sank as she recognized Buster's distinctive golden coat through the sea of people. Margaret's late husband had given her Buster as a puppy 5 years ago, just before he passed away. The dog was her only companion and most precious reminder of her husband. Among the witnesses stood Jake Rodriguez, an off-duty police officer who happened to be shopping for his daughter's birthday present. His trained eye immediately assessed the situation, noting Martin's aggressive stance and the injured animal. Jake stepped forward, ready to intervene if necessary, while mentally preparing to file an official report. He had seen enough cases of animal cruelty to know this wasn't just a minor incident. The officer began taking mental notes of everything he observed, knowing his testimony could be important later. The mall's atmosphere completely shifted from a pleasant shopping experience to a tense confrontation. Store employees stepped out to see what was happening, and even the food court seemed to quiet down. Children who normally begged their parents for treats now clung to them, upset by the dog's whimpering. The fountain area, usually a place where people relaxed and made wishes, had become a stage for this disturbing drama. Every person present would remember this moment differently, but all agreed on one thing: what they witnessed was completely unacceptable. Social media exploded with posts about the incident before Martin even realized he was being filmed. Twitter hashtags like #MallDogAbuser and Justice for Buster began trending within minutes. Facebook live streams captured different angles of the confrontation, and Instagram stories spread the news to thousands of followers. People who weren't even at the mall started sharing their outrage, calling for justice and identification of the cruel man. Local news stations received tips about the incident, and reporters began making their way to the scene. The timing couldn't have been worse for Martin, though he didn't know it yet. The mall was hosting a pet adoption event that weekend, and animal welfare advocates had been setting up nearby. Several volunteers witnessed the incident and immediately contacted their organizations. The local animal shelters director, Karen Thompson, received multiple calls about what happened. She had been fighting for stricter animal cruelty laws in the city and saw this as a perfect example of why such legislation was necessary. The incident at the mall wasn't just about one man kicking the dog anymore. It had become a catalyst for a much larger conversation about animal rights and human responsibility. The crowd continued to grow, waiting to see how justice would unfold before their eyes. Jason Statham had been in countless action sequences throughout his career. He had faced off against villains on screen, performed dangerous stunts, and portrayed tough characters who always stood up for justice. But this moment at the mall was different. This was real life, not a movie set, and the victim wasn't an actor, but an innocent animal who couldn't defend itself. As the British actor approached Martin, his usual calm demeanor masked the genuine anger building inside him. The crowd parted instinctively as Statham walked through, his presence commanding respect without saying a word. Years of martial arts training and physical conditioning had given him a natural authority that made people step aside. He wasn't wearing his usual film costumes or surrounded by cameras and crew. Today, he was just Jason, a man who happened to witness something that went against every principle he held dear. His simple jeans and t-shirt didn't diminish the power of his presence as he closed the distance between himself and Martin. Every eye in the mall seemed focused on this unexpected confrontation. People whispered excitedly about seeing a real movie star, but Statham's attention remained entirely on the situation at hand. He had grown up in a working-class family in England, where his parents taught him to respect all living creatures. His father, a street seller and lounge singer, had always kept dogs and taught young Jason that how someone treats animals reveals their true character. These early lessons shaped the man who now stood before Martin, ready to defend a creature who couldn't speak for itself. Statham's film career had made him a household name, known for playing tough guys with hearts of gold. Movies like The Transporter and The Expendables showed audiences a man who fought for the underdog and protected the innocent. But this wasn't about his Hollywood persona. This was Jason the person, someone who genuinely cared about animal welfare. He regularly donated to animal shelters and had rescued several dogs over the years. Seeing Martin kick the golden retriever triggered something deep within him, a protective instinct that had nothing to do with cameras or scripts. The actor's approach was measured and controlled, each step deliberate. He had learned through years of action scenes that real strength came from restraint, not aggression. As he drew closer to Martin, Statham's trained eye assessed the situation. He noticed the dog's labored breathing, the way it favored one side, and the fear in its eyes. His jaw clenched tighter with each observation. The mall security hadn't arrived yet, and Statham knew he had to handle this carefully. Violence wouldn't solve anything, but he couldn't let this cruelty go unchallenged. Martin's body language shifted dramatically as recognition dawned on his face. The confident swagger disappeared, replaced by uncertainty and a touch of fear. Here stood someone he had probably watched in movies, someone who made a living portraying fighters and tough guys. But more importantly, here stood someone who clearly wasn't impressed by Martin's expensive suit or arrogant attitude. The power dynamic had shifted completely. Martin, who moments ago felt superior to everyone around him, suddenly found himself facing someone who commanded genuine respect. The surrounding crowd held their collective breath, phones still recording but voices hushed in anticipation. They witnessed something more powerful than any movie scene, a real person standing up for what was right. Statham's eyes never left Martin's face as he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of genuine conviction. This wasn't about celebrity or fame. This was about basic human decency and the responsibility people had to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Years of interviews and public appearances had taught Statham how to handle tense situations with grace. But this felt different from any red carpet event or press conference. This was personal. The way Martin had laughed after kicking the dog showed a level of cruelty that disgusted him. Statham had played villains in movies, understood their motivations for the sake of storytelling. But real-life cruelty, especially toward innocent animals, was something he couldn't comprehend or tolerate. As he prepared to confront Martin directly, Statham drew on all his experience, not as an action star, but as a human being who believed in standing up for those who needed protection. The confrontation between Jason Statham and Martin Chen created an electric tension in the mall. Statham's words hung in the air as he held the injured dog gently in his muscular arms. Martin's face showed a mixture of embarrassment and defiance, his expensive facade cracking under the actor's steady gaze. The businessman tried to maintain his arrogant posture, but his voice wavered when he spoke. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not in such a public setting by someone whose presence commanded natural authority. Martin's mind raced as he searched for a way out of this situation. His usual tactics of intimidation and dismissal seemed useless against Statham's calm determination. The actor's reputation for performing his own stunts and martial arts expertise wasn't lost on Martin. But more than physical intimidation, it was the moral authority in Statham's voice that left Martin speechless. The crowd around them grew larger, creating a circle of witnesses that made escape impossible. Martin felt trapped, something he hadn't experienced since his childhood days of being bullied before he learned to be the bully himself. Statham adjusted his hold on the whimpering dog, cradling it more comfortably while maintaining eye contact with Martin. His years of experience dealing with difficult personalities on movie sets had taught him patience. He understood that public humiliation rarely changed someone's behavior permanently. Instead, he chose his words carefully, speaking loud enough for everyone to hear, but directing his message straight at Martin's conscience, if he had one. The actor's British accent gave his words an extra edge of sophistication that contrasted sharply with the raw emotion behind them. The golden retriever seemed to sense it was now safe, its trembling slowly subsiding in Statham's protective embrace. A woman in the crowd offered her scarf to help make the dog more comfortable, and Statham accepted it with a grateful nod. This small act of kindness from a stranger highlighted the stark difference between normal human compassion and Martin's cruel behavior. The businessman watched this exchange, his designer suit suddenly feeling like a costume that couldn't hide his true nature from the judging eyes around him. Margaret Wilson pushed through the crowd, tears streaming down her wrinkled face as she recognized her beloved Buster in the famous actor's arms. Her arthritis forgotten in her urgency to reach her pet, she called out Buster's name with a voice full of anguish and relief. The dog's tail wagged weakly at the sound of his owner's voice, bringing the first smile to Statham's face since he had witnessed the attack. The reunion between the elderly woman and her companion added another layer of emotion to the already charged atmosphere. Martin watched the touching scene unfold, something stirring uncomfortably in his chest. He had never considered that the stupid mutt might mean something to someone, that it might be loved and cherished like family. His parents had taught him that emotions were weakness, that caring too much about anything except success was foolish. But seeing this grandmother's tears, hearing the love in her voice as she spoke to her injured pet, made him question those lessons for the first time. The discomfort he felt wasn't from public embarrassment anymore. It was something deeper, something he couldn't quite name. Statham carefully transferred Buster to Margaret's waiting arms, making sure to support the dog's injured side. He then turned his full attention back to Martin, who now looked smaller despite his expensive clothes and tall stature. The actor's voice remained controlled but carried unmistakable warning as he spoke about consequences and choices. He didn't threaten physical violence. That wasn't his style off-screen. Instead, he spoke about character, about the kind of person someone chose to be when they thought no one was watching. The security guards finally arrived, having pushed through the dense crowd of onlookers. Their uniforms and official presence added another layer of seriousness to the situation. They had already reviewed the security footage and received multiple witness statements on their way to the scene. The lead guard approached Martin with professional detachment, though his expression showed clear disapproval. The mall's zero-tolerance policy for violence, whether against humans or animals, was about to be enforced. Martin's perfect day had transformed into a nightmare of his own making, all because he couldn't control his temper around a friendly dog. The mall security office felt cramped as Martin sat in the plastic chair, his designer suit wrinkled and his confidence completely shattered. The lead security officer, David Barnes, reviewed the footage on multiple screens while filling out incident reports. Martin watched his own actions replay on the monitors, each viewing making him cringe more than the last. The kick looked even more vicious from the security camera's angle, and his laughter afterward seemed almost evil. He couldn't believe that was really him on the screen, yet there was no denying the evidence. Officer Barnes maintained professional composure as he documented everything. He had worked mall security for 15 years and had seen plenty of shoplifters, fights, and disturbances, but animal cruelty cases always bothered him the most. He owned 2 rescue dogs himself and couldn't understand how anyone could hurt such innocent creatures. As he typed up the report, he made sure to include every detail from witness statements. The fact that Jason Statham was involved would certainly make this case more public than usual, but Barnes focused on following proper procedure regardless of celebrity involvement. Martin's phone buzzed continuously in his pocket, but he didn't dare check it. He knew the videos were probably already circulating online, his face clearly visible in every frame. His career, built on networking and reputation, could crumble from this single moment of cruelty. The real estate world was surprisingly small, and clients who were animal lovers might refuse to work with him. His company prided itself on family values and community involvement. How would they react when they saw their senior sales manager kicking a dog and laughing about it? 2 police officers arrived to take official statements and determine if criminal charges would be filed. Officer Jake Rodriguez, who had witnessed everything while off-duty, provided his professional assessment of the incident. His testimony carried extra weight given his law enforcement background. He described Martin's deliberate action and apparent enjoyment of the animal's pain. The on-duty officers took notes carefully, understanding this case would likely receive significant media attention. They had to ensure everything was documented properly for potential prosecution. Margaret Wilson sat in the mall's first aid station, cradling Buster while waiting for the veterinary transport Statham had arranged. The actor stayed with her, offering comfort and assurance that everything would be okay. Margaret shared stories about Buster, how the dog had helped her cope with her husband's death, how he was her only companion in her small apartment. Statham listened intently, his respect for the elderly woman growing with each story. He understood the deep bond between humans and their pets, having experienced it with his own dogs. The veterinary clinic Statham contacted was one of the best in the city. They sent their mobile unit immediately, understanding the urgency of the situation. Dr. Rebecca Chen, no relation to Martin, arrived with her assistant to examine Buster on site. Her gentle hands carefully checked the dog's ribs and breathing, while Margaret watched anxiously. The initial examination suggested bruised ribs and possible minor internal bruising, but nothing life-threatening. Still, Dr. Chen recommended full X-rays and overnight observation to be completely certain. Word of the incident spread rapidly through social media and local news outlets. Reporters began arriving at the mall, hoping to interview witnesses or get statements from those involved. The mall management struggled to control the growing media presence while maintaining normal business operations. They released a brief statement condemning the act of animal cruelty and confirming their cooperation with authorities. Several animal rights organizations also caught wind of the story, preparing press releases calling for stricter enforcement of animal protection laws. Martin's lawyer arrived at the security office, having been contacted by Martin's father after seeing the news coverage. William Sterling was expensive and experienced, known for getting wealthy clients out of difficult situations, but even he looked concerned after reviewing the evidence. The video was undeniable, the witnesses numerous and credible, and the involvement of a celebrity added unwanted attention. He advised Martin to remain silent and began planning damage control strategies. This wasn't just about avoiding criminal charges anymore. It was about salvaging what remained of Martin's reputation and career. The days following the mall incident became a nightmare for Martin Chen. His face appeared on every local news channel, and the video had gone viral with millions of views across different platforms. The headline, "Real Estate Executive Kicks Dog, Jason Statham Intervenes," dominated social media feeds. Martin couldn't leave his apartment without being recognized and confronted by angry citizens. His doorbell rang constantly with reporters seeking interviews, and his mailbox filled with hate mail from animal lovers worldwide. The court of public opinion had already rendered its verdict. Martin's employer, Pinnacle Real Estate Group, called an emergency board meeting the morning after the incident. The company's CEO, Robert Harrison, watched the video with disgust before addressing the board. Their firm had spent years building a reputation as a family-friendly, community-oriented business. They sponsored local animal shelters and participated in charity events. Having a senior executive caught abusing an animal contradicted everything they stood for. The board voted unanimously to suspend Martin pending investigation, though everyone knew termination was inevitable. The legal consequences began mounting quickly. The district attorney's office, responding to public pressure and clear evidence, filed formal charges of animal cruelty. Martin faced potential fines up to $50,000 and possible jail time of 6 months. His expensive lawyer worked overtime trying to negotiate a plea deal, but the prosecutor seemed determined to make an example of this case. The widespread video evidence and celebrity witness made it impossible to deny what happened. Martin's legal bills started accumulating rapidly, eating into his savings. Buster's recovery became a positive story amid the controversy. Dr. Rebecca Chen provided regular updates through the clinic's social media, showing the golden retriever healing well under treatment. Jason Statham visited several times, bringing toys and treats for Buster while checking on Margaret Wilson. These visits were photographed by fans and shared widely, contrasting sharply with images of Martin being escorted to court appearances. The actor's genuine concern for the dog's welfare enhanced his already positive public image. Margaret Wilson found herself overwhelmed by the support from strangers around the world. People sent cards, flowers, and donations to help with Buster's medical bills, though Statham had already covered everything. She gave interviews to select media outlets, sharing how much Buster meant to her and thanking everyone for their kindness. Her story touched hearts globally, especially when she revealed that Buster had been her late husband's final gift to her. The elderly woman's grace and dignity throughout the ordeal earned widespread admiration. Martin's personal life crumbled as quickly as his professional one. His girlfriend of 6 months ended their relationship via text message, not wanting association with an animal abuser. His social circle, mainly composed of business contacts and superficial friendships, disappeared entirely. Even his parents struggled with the shame, his father especially disappointed that Martin had been caught, rather than showing genuine remorse for his actions. The isolation forced Martin to confront truths about himself he had long avoided. Animal rights organizations seized the moment to push for stronger legislation. They organized peaceful protests outside the courthouse during Martin's appearances, holding signs with Buster's picture and demanding justice. The case became a rallying point for animal welfare advocates nationwide. Petition signatures gathered in the hundreds of thousands, calling for mandatory jail time for animal abusers and stricter enforcement of existing laws. Local politicians took notice, with several promising to sponsor new animal protection bills. As Martin prepared for his court date, he began receiving letters from unexpected sources. Some came from reformed animal abusers, sharing their stories of change and redemption. Others were from therapists specializing in anger management and empathy development. A few business contacts quietly reached out, suggesting that if he showed genuine remorse and sought help, perhaps rebuilding his life wasn't impossible. But first, he had to face the consequences of his actions. The man who once kicked a dog for inconveniencing him now found his entire world turned upside down by that single moment of cruelty. Retroius. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Patricia Morgan entered on the day of Martin's sentencing. The gallery was packed with animal rights activists, reporters, and concerned citizens who had followed the case closely. Martin sat beside his lawyer, wearing a conservative suit instead of his usual flashy attire. His face showed the stress of recent weeks, with dark circles under his eyes and a humbled expression replacing his former arrogance. As the judge reviewed the case file, Martin's hands trembled slightly on the table. Judge Morgan was known for her fair but firm approach to justice. She had reviewed all evidence, including the viral video, witness testimonies, and character references. The judge also considered the public impact of this case and its potential to set precedents for animal cruelty sentences. She noted Jason Statham's witness statement, which clearly described the deliberate nature of Martin's attack on Buster. The security footage played once more in court, causing several people in the gallery to shake their heads in disgust. Martin's lawyer made a final plea for leniency, highlighting his client's lack of prior criminal record and professional accomplishments. William Sterling argued that the public humiliation and loss of career were already significant punishments. He presented character letters from Martin's former colleagues, though notably few people had been willing to write them. The lawyer emphasized that Martin had enrolled in anger management courses and was seeking therapy to address his behavioral issues. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Sarah Kim, painted a different picture. She argued that Martin's actions showed a dangerous lack of empathy and self-control. The fact that he laughed after kicking Buster demonstrated a troubling enjoyment of causing pain. Kim emphasized that without consequences, such behavior could escalate. She also noted the trauma caused to Margaret Wilson, an elderly widow who depended on Buster for emotional support. When given the chance to speak, Martin stood up slowly. His voice cracked as he began his statement to the court. For the first time publicly, he expressed genuine remorse for his actions. He apologized to Margaret Wilson, who sat in the front row with Buster now fully recovered by her side. Martin admitted he had lived a selfish life, focused only on material success while ignoring the importance of compassion. He acknowledged that kicking Buster was inexcusable and that he was seeking help to become a better person. Margaret Wilson was given the opportunity to provide a victim impact statement. The elderly woman spoke softly about how Buster had saved her from loneliness after her husband's death. She described the fear she felt watching her beloved companion being hurt and the sleepless nights that followed. However, she surprised everyone by expressing hope that Martin could change and learn from this experience. Her grace and forgiveness moved many in the courtroom to tears. Judge Morgan delivered her verdict with careful consideration. She sentenced Martin to 90 days in jail, with 60 days suspended pending completion of court-ordered programs. He would serve 30 days immediately, followed by 2 years probation. Additionally, Martin was ordered to complete 200 hours of community service at animal shelters, pay a substantial fine, and continue therapy. The judge stated that while she considered the public humiliation Martin had endured, the court could not ignore the deliberate cruelty he had shown. As court officers prepared to take Martin into custody, he made eye contact with Margaret Wilson. The elderly woman gave him a small nod, perhaps seeing hope for redemption in his tear-filled eyes. Jason Statham, who had attended the sentencing, watched as Martin was led away. The actor had used his platform to advocate for animal rights throughout the trial, turning a moment of cruelty into a movement for change. Outside the courthouse, animal welfare advocates celebrated the verdict as a victory for justice. 2 years after the mall incident, Martin Chen emerged from the Riverside Animal Shelter after completing his final day of community service. His expensive suits had been replaced by simple clothes suitable for cleaning kennels and walking dogs. His hands, once soft from office work, now showed calluses from months of physical labor. But the biggest change was in his eyes, which reflected genuine warmth instead of cold ambition. The man who once kicked a dog had spent hundreds of hours caring for abandoned and abused animals. During his 30 days in jail, Martin had experienced a profound awakening. Surrounded by concrete walls and forced to confront his actions, he realized how empty his life had been. His cellmate, an older man serving time for theft, shared stories about his own journey to redemption. These conversations planted seeds of change in Martin's mind. He began reading books about empathy and animal behavior, understanding for the first time that animals had complex emotions and deep capacity for love. The court-mandated therapy sessions proved more valuable than Martin initially expected. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, his therapist, helped him explore the roots of his lack of empathy. They discussed his childhood, where showing emotion was seen as weakness, and his father's teachings about dominance over compassion. Through months of sessions, Martin learned to recognize and express his feelings healthfully. He discovered that true strength came from kindness, not cruelty or material success. Martin's community service at the animal shelter became transformative rather than just punishment. Initially, the shelter staff treated him coldly, knowing his history. But as weeks turned to months, they witnessed genuine change. Martin arrived early, stayed late, and volunteered for the hardest tasks. He formed special bonds with the most traumatized animals, spending extra time with dogs who had been abused. His patience with these scared creatures showed a complete reversal from the man who had hurt Buster. The shelter's director, Karen Thompson, became one of Martin's unexpected mentors. She had initially opposed accepting him for community service, but later admitted he became one of their most dedicated volunteers. Martin not only completed his required hours, but continued volunteering afterward. He organized fundraising events using his business skills, raising thousands of dollars for shelter improvements. His transformation from animal abuser to advocate amazed everyone who witnessed it. Martin's journey caught media attention again, but this time for positive reasons. Local news stations ran follow-up stories showing him working at the shelter, playing with dogs he once would have ignored. Jason Statham, who had kept track of Martin's progress, visited the shelter to see the changes himself. The actor was impressed by Martin's genuine transformation and publicly acknowledged his redemption journey. This endorsement helped Martin slowly rebuild his reputation in the community. Margaret, Wilson, and Buster became unlikely parts of Martin's redemption story. After months of therapy and community service, Martin wrote a heartfelt letter to Margaret, asking if he could apologize in person. The elderly woman agreed to meet him at a local park. With Buster by her side, she listened as Martin expressed genuine remorse and gratitude for the lesson her forgiveness had taught him. In an extraordinary moment, Buster approached Martin and allowed him to pet his golden fur, as if the dog also recognized the change in the man. Martin never returned to his high-powered real estate career. Instead, he found work at a nonprofit organization focused on animal welfare education. His salary was a fraction of his former income, but his life held more meaning than ever before. He adopted 2 rescue dogs of his own, both victims of abuse who needed patient, loving homes. The man who once measured success by his bank account now measured it by the lives he helped save and the compassion he learned to show. His story became a powerful reminder that even those who commit cruel acts can change, and that redemption is possible for anyone willing to do the hard work of transformation.